Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of our program. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we are privileged to have with us James Marlow, who is the president and co-founder of Radiance Solar. Welcome to the program today, James.
Well, it's great to be with you. Thank you.
Hey, so let's just get started with giving us a little bit of your background, what led you to your industry, which is solar, and then we want to focus on your award this year, 2016, being included in the Inc. 5000 recipient, and that's a wonderful honor. So I think there could be some guiding principles that you run your company by that would be wonderful to chat through that way that has helped your company grow over the years. But get us started with telling us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Well, it's great to be with you. Radiance Solar is a 9-year-old company that focuses on solar for commercial, industrial, utility customers. We have created several hundred projects over the last several years in the southeastern United States. We're based in Atlanta, Georgia. We're located very near the Georgia Tech campus, and we've done many projects across Georgia Tech and done some primary research with Georgia Tech, which we co-own some patents with. And our focus is really trying to help people create ROI positive solar energy plants that also reduce environmental impact.
Now, you mentioned that you focus on commercial. Is that by design? Is that how you initially started your company, is to focus mainly commercial as opposed to residential?
When we first started, we would really do anything possible in solar. It was a very early stage market here in Georgia, and we would do projects of any size or shape or form, and we did a number of residential projects. And then really early this year, we really started to restrict our work and focus exclusively on what we really had been working towards for a good while, which was commercial, industrial, and then utility scale projects.
I love when I hear that, because I think that people tend to hold on too long in business to being all things to all people. And as you have described, and probably can even go at length and talk about some of the lessons you've learned with kind of really coming in with that more narrow focus, not that you would never do a different kind of a job, but your focus is on the commercial. So was that you said you had been working toward that? Was that something that, was there a trigger that made you guys think, okay, now we really just need to, sharpen that focus a little bit more and focus on solar to then become, the best that way? Because the more you focus then in that niche, commercial niche, you tend to learn things, maybe regulations or shortcuts or ways to be more efficient. And I think that really then shines through and helps to go towards your competitive advantage potentially.
Well, I think my background has really been doing more work with corporate America. I began my career with really Lotus Development in the software business, and then we became part of IBM. Then I worked with Yahoo. So I think in general, I just kind of have a preference of working with larger companies and organizations versus residential. In the construction market, you don't typically see large construction companies that do both. They typically will specialize and do one or the other because they are very, very different in many ways.
Yeah, I would imagine so. That makes a whole lot of sense. So let's talk about commercial and your solar. Obviously, you're not the only company in the region that does solar for commercial accounts. What would you say sets yourself apart so that a commercial account would really understand, we need to really look hard at Radiance Solar because of this competitive advantage?
Well, I think the portfolio of work that we've accomplished and the fact that we do a lot of repeat work for large customers says a lot about us. We do work for people like Georgia Tech or Georgia Power. We've also done work for people like Anheuser-Busch, or we did electrical work on an IKEA project for a large solar project. So we just have proven experience and a lot of passion around what we do. We believe that installing solar has both a positive economic impact for our customers, but also a societal benefit and a reduction in environmental impact.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. What do you feel, or what do you foresee as kind of looking forward in the next 5 to 10 years in this industry? What do you see? Where do you see solar moving? Because I know that in the industry you can feel like hey, it's going one direction or the other. But what do you see as some things that are on the horizon in solar?
Well, our business has changed every 6 months since we've begun 9 years ago. It's a very dynamic space from a regulatory and policy framework standpoint. It's changed quite a bit from the actual technology that we use, the different types of panels, inverters, monitoring equipment. It's constantly improving and changing. And what we do today is install solar panels just like we did 9 years ago, but the equipment and the techniques and the personnel are just so much more efficient, so much more engaged at rapidly installing solar. We talk a lot about velocity. We want to install systems, with a high installation velocity.
Yeah. Do you feel like regulation? And I know you cannot, definitively comment on this because no one knows, but where do you feel regulatory direction is going? Do you feel like that kind of would sway the industry at all?
Well, in the past, policies were, I think, more critical than they are now because what's really driving our industry now are the economics. Solar panel prices have dropped about 80% in the last 9 years since we began. And so the pure payback and investment reduction is really what's driving our industry. Very similar to flat panel televisions. So when you, almost every conference room or room I'm in nowadays, even gas pumps and elevators have flat panel television screens. And that, going to scale and the large volume of production allows the prices to decline. And that same trend is happening in solar and making solar much more practical from a payback ROI standpoint.
Do you, looking at the industry as a whole, I would suspect as a I'm not very knowledgeable in that industry, but just looking from the outside looking in, I would suspect that it's on the young side, meaning what's the penetration? If there's, what percentage of homes that could have solar, and is there a whole upside, and not homes, but even just commercial, like you say, but is there a lot of opportunity there where as it gets more and more refined and all the things you are moving toward, is the solar industry something that is, just got a lot of upside?
Well, it's a very young industry. The only thing that I'm absolutely certain of is that there's going to be a lot more solar. Now, what shape that will take and what will be the rate of adoption is the wild card. But we see as panel prices drop, as inverter prices drop, as the cost of system installations drop, more and more people are embracing solar for business use, for commercial, more schools. You see a rapid adoption happening in the Department of Defense. And that's something that's happening globally, not just here in Georgia or Colorado has a very active solar market where you're based, but we do see solar really becoming much more of a mainstream and more commonplace product.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I would agree. I mean, it feels like a young industry and just only upward to go. You mentioned that you have been around, your firm has been around for about 9 years. What would you say is one of the keys to surviving the first few years? And I use the word surviving just because statistically, businesses, when they start up, have a large percentage of failure in the first few years. And obviously, you guys have thrived and have achieved great things to even be, selected and ranked on the Inc. 5000. What would you say some of those key points were in the early years?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with just raw tenacity. With Jamie Porges and I, we were starting a company in a new area, a new technology in the Great Recession. So we had to really persevere and struggle for a number of years to really have the growth that we really wanted to. This year's been a great year for our company. We're very pleased with the progress that we've made this year. We're up to about 50 employees now, and hope for a steady growth period in 2017 as well.
You bring up a good point. I didn't even pick up on that. 9 years ago from now was right in the height of that literal recession. I mean, it was some hard times, and we all felt it. And here you are starting up something that is new in a pretty new industry. And I don't care to know numbers or anything, but I would suspect that there's some, heavier obligations for being able to even have equipment or things like that. In other words, you weren't starting a company where you just went off of your brain power and you were selling your consulting services. So what were some of those kind of fears or hurdles that you had to overcome even in the beginning during that just kind of tumultuous time?
Well, I think being a startup, I read not long ago, is like being in a constant state of war. I mean, you're constantly addressing problems at every scale. I think the old axiom that startups have is that no matter what you plan or forecast, it's going to take twice as much time and twice as much money. And I think that's true. There's so many things that you don't know what you don't know. Those unknowns and known unknowns. So a lot's going on, a lot's happening around you, and you've got to stick to your vision. You've got to pivot when you need to. There was a period where we were doing more solar thermal systems, and the price of natural gas dropped, the price of solar PV panels dropped, and now we don't do any solar thermal work at all. It's all photovoltaic. So, adopting to the market, and as I said, as those kind of 6-month interval changes occur, responding to that and being willing to change and adapt as opposed to, really being, unwilling to change your business plan or your model because the market's, changing around you very quickly.
Yeah, that's a super point. I was talking to someone recently about pivot, and so many times the phrase pivot in a larger firm just means a slight shift. In a smaller firm, it could mean a complete 180, and so you have to know what the phrase or the opportunity pivot would mean for your company, and so sometimes that is really tough. So hey, final question: if a commercial entity were listening to this and thinking, what would be an indicator or a trigger for them to think maybe I ought to check in to see if solar is a good option for us? What would something, because maybe sometimes people don't just wake up and say, I'm going to go call a solar company. What would be a trigger for them to think, this has happened or this is happening, maybe we should look into see if solar would be a good option for our organization?
Well, that's a really good question. I think the first thing I would want to know is what are their goals? I would want to know some fundamental information like, do they own their building? Do they have any ground area around their building that might be suitable for ground-mounted solar? I'd want to know if they have the ability to take advantage of a 30% federal tax credit. That's a key economic driver and really good payback in solar. I would want to know if they have any environmental goals. I would want to know if they're a customer-facing organization and they do executive briefings on their facility. They bring customers to their site. Once we kind of go through a group of what we call our 7 questions, we have a much better understanding of whether a potential project will move forward. And one of the most important in that being is what is their average kilowatt-hour energy rate? In Georgia, if you're paying 10 cents or more per kilowatt-hour, you can typically get a very quick payback and have a very viable project. If you're a large user, a big industrial user or commercial user, and you're paying 5.5 cents, it's going to be a lot harder to make solar pencil.
And I guess that's the key point, because there's, at the end of the day, the bottom line is the bottom line. And so there may be, financial officers that would look at that and say, you know what, it's worth a try. Let's see what our kilowatt hours are currently and what this savings could be, because all those other things with the tax credits, all those are wonderful ways to help the ROI and making the money back quicker. But I think that's the bottom line is you are providing services that, yes, are wonderful for the environment, but it really does help the bottom line of these organizations. And if you can help save them money now, and then once the ROI is hit, now it's a lot more savings. That's a wonderful thing for that organization.
Well, one of the key things about solar is it is a very long-lasting asset. So the panels themselves come with a 25-year warranty. So you're really looking at an energy plant that will produce clean, renewable, safe energy for 25 to 30 years.
Yeah, that's a super good point, because if you're talking about refinancing a car loan, that car, what's the statistic there? You're going to change 3 to 4 to 5 years. This is a long term, and if you look at ROI after X number of months or years, and then you look forward that time frame, we're talking some pretty big numbers, and that's really exciting. So what's the best way that someone can learn more about Radiance Solar? How would you recommend them reaching out to you just to learn a little bit more?
Well, our website is a very comprehensive summary of our work, and that would, of course, be www.radiancesolar.com. We welcome you to contact our office in Atlanta at 404-885-9898.
Excellent. Well, James, thank you so much for your time today, and again, congratulations on the wonderful honor with Inc. 5000.
Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed our time and appreciate you reaching out to us.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.